So preferred stock. I didn't do the issuing of preferred stock, particularly just sort of the basic issuing, because it's just like issuing common stock, and you simply just have to use the term preferred stock instead of common when you're doing the initial journal entry to issue the stock. And your paid in capital will be in excess of par value on your preferred stock. Okay, so we need to know a little bit about preferred stock. There's a whole bunch of terms we'll go over, but basically companies can have different classes of stocks. They can have common stock, they can have preferred stock, they can have class A and B stock. One would be voting and the other would be non-voting, so that's just good things to be aware of. I think it was Ben and Jerry's back in the day. They had a Class A stock, which was the non-voting stock that was sold to the public, and then they had a Class B stock that was just held by the owners of the company, and those were the only ones who could vote. So there's all sorts of different things you can do. Preferred stock can have preferences in terms of dividends. What does that mean? It means that if a company declares a dividend, that the preferred stockholders must be paid before the common stockholders get their dividend. So they have a dividend preference. They get theirs first. You can have a liquidation preference. This means that the preferred stockholders, should the company go under, they get paid off before the common stockholders do. So that's your liquidation preference. The creditors are first in line, then you've got the preferred stockholders, then the common stockholders. The government's in there somewhere too. Okay, the stock can be convertible. This means that there can be a provision written into the preferred stock where it will, at the option of the buyer, can be converted into common shares, common stock. Callable. This means that the corporation who issued the preferred stock has the option to call it in at a set price. This is all spelled out in the various stock agreements. Okay, so callable, and then you can have cumulative preferred stock. Cumulative preferred means that if the dividends, the board of directors has to declare dividends. If the board of directors don't declare dividends on preferred stock, and the stock is cumulative preferred, that means that all of the past dividends that might have been declared have got to be paid before the common stockholders get their dividend. So cumulative preferred, they have a right to all the past dividends that are, had not been declared before the common stockholders get any dividend. Participating, that means that and we're not going to really run into the accounting for this, but it just means that in some circumstances the preferred stockholders can participate in dividends over and above the stated rate. So usually it's an 8% preferred stock. That would be the amount of the dividend anticipated. So that would be participating. And then redeemable, at in the buyer's option, the investor's option, the stock can be redeemed at a certain price. We're not going to really run into that either. The things that we'll be looking at will be sort of the cumulative, and a little bit on the convertible, and sort of how the dividends work. So those are the things we'll focus a little bit on here. Okay, so what else do we have here? What else do you need to know about preferred stock? Okay, I'll leave the part on why buy it and all that. That's fairly straightforward. One interesting thing is that you should be aware of is that if you have certain types of preferred stock, it's almost like owning a bond. It's almost like a bond, more like a bond than a stock. So say you have a preferred stock that has a set dividend amount. Okay, so it's an 8% preferred stock. And then it's also cumulative, so the dividends accumulate. And then it also could be redeemable. It has sort of a set due date on it. So when you've got something like that, it's very close to being a bond. It's very similar to a bond. So, you know, when you think about it, how different is it if you owned a, you know, a cumulative, redeemable, you know, set interest rate preferred stock, as opposed to a bond that was going to pay you dividends and had a set maturity date. And these are close enough so that on some financial statements you'll see you'll see a separate section for preferred stock that's kind of in between your liabilities and your stockholders' equity section. They'll have the preferred stock. In international GAAP, IGAAP, most preferred stock does end up getting reported as debt rather than equity. So that's just things to be aware of. Okay, so let's do a little example here with the preferred stock. This company has 10,000 shares of $100 par value, 8% preferred stock. They've also got 50,000 shares of $10 par common stock, and that's at the end of 12/31/20. So if the preferred stock is cumulative and the dividends were last paid, you know, on 12/31/17, how much are we going to report as dividends in arrears? And dividends in arrears are the dividends that a cumulative preferred stock holder would be entitled to, but were not declared in the past. So if the board of directors did declare a dividend at the end of, you know, 12/31/20, you know, how much would they have to pay, and, you know, if they didn't, how much would you report as dividends in arrears? So to figure that out, you're going to start and just figure you got 10,000 shares of stock, right? And it's times $100 par value. So you multiply that out, and so your total preferred stock that would show up on the balance sheet would be $1 million. So the total annual dividend is 8%, so you simply go times 8%, and so those stockholders would be owed $80,000 per year, and that's the annual preferred dividend. Okay, so it's the amount that's reported as the preferred stock on the balance sheet times the dividend percentage rate. And so then if they would owe for 2018, 2019, and if they didn't, and 2020, and so you would have to take this 80,000 times 3, and that would be the total dividends in arrears if the board of directors did not declare a dividend this year, and that would actually be the amount the preferred stockholders would have to receive of any dividends before the common stockholders got anything. Okay? So you need to know how to calculate the dividends on preferred stock. Okay. Say the preferred stock was, and how would it be reported? Obviously, if it were a declared dividend, it would become what would become a preferred dividend payable. If it were not declared, the dividends in arrears get reported in the notes to the financial statements. Okay. All right. So now we got a preferred convertible stock. I'm sorry, preferred stock. Let's put it this way. Convertible into 7 shares of $10 par common stock. And we convert 4,000 shares. Okay. So let's just think about this. If we were doing a journal entry, the preferred stock is coming off the books, at least some of it, because we're converting it. It will no longer be out there as preferred stock. What's coming on the books would be common stock, because we're converting preferred stock to common stock. And because life is never simple, there's probably going to be some paid in capital in excess of par value on our common stock. Then we just need to fill in the numbers. Okay, 4,000 shares were converted. Okay, so when we do this, we're gonna be doing this at the par value. So 4,000 times the $100 par value, right? Would give us 400,000. Okay, so our preferred stock is coming off the books, 400,000. That's just the number of shares that we've got outstanding times the par value of the stock. Okay, and it converts to 7,000 shares of $10 par common stock. Okay, so let's see how this works. So we get 10,000 share, I'm sorry, we're converting 4,000 shares. So we go 4,000 and 7 is convertible to seven shares of common stock each. So altogether, there's going to be 28,000 shares of common stock that ends up out here. So what have we got? We got the 28,000 shares of common stock times the $10 par of the common stock now. So that gives us 280,000 gets attributed to common stock. You may have to work through this one a couple of times on your own. And then 4,000 minus the 280 would give us the additional paid-in capital of the 120. Okay, so that's sort of the thought process for converting the preferred stock into common stock. All right, and then the last one, preferred stock is issued at 107. That's just a different way of stating it. And when they're stating it that way, if you go back, we had the 10,000 shares times $100 par. So we have 1,000,000 attributable to our preferred stock. And if it's issued at 107, that would mean the proceeds we would get would be 1,070,000. Okay? So if we were going to do a journal entry here, if we're issuing it, we would get 1,070,000. All right, and then we would have our preferred stock. We'd have our paid-in capital in excess of par on our preferred, and this would be okay. So we had issued 10,000. So of this, 1,000,000 would be the preferred stock. It's just the 10,000 times the 100, and then if the 70,000 would be the additional paid-in capital. All right, so that's a little bit on preferred stock, and now we can move on to what's next.